But the way that we have reacted and what we've allowed Russia to do in Ukraine, how can NATO trust us, especially under this administration? That's the question that has to be raised, and that raises concerns of international instability.
Yeah, I took the oath twice myself. I took it when I first went in the Navy in 1975, and then later when I worked in federal service in the 1990s
Mhm.
as a land surveyor. So I take it seriously, and like you said, you don't that oath never leaves you. It's not something that you just put aside when you get out.
No, they're not just random words. You
No,
know, you are truly taking an oath to the Constitution, not to a president, not to a dictator, not to anybody. You're taking an oath to the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you can't argue that the Constitution is not under attack right now.
right.
The Supreme Court, people are saying it's a win for birthright citizenship in the Supreme Court. I'm terrified to go out there in the first place.
Well, how much of a win could it be if three people voted against the 14th Amendment?
Exactly. Exactly. And what they put in this sense. So it's the Constitution is very much under attack domestically.
Well, let me mention this current event here and see what you think about it. The new DNI, Mr. Pulte, is now this afternoon firing a lot of staff.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you have a reaction to that.
It's a story that we've seen time and time again when our current administration is putting people in place to make these decisions. They are ensuring that we are left with loyalists, whether it's this organization or it's the FBI or even the CIA. We're seeing it with Hegseth in the military. Anyone that could possibly challenge them. And reading that, I immediately go back to looking at General Mattis and at General Milley,
That's
two
right.
incredibly well respected, distinguished leaders of our generation.
Competent.
Beyond competent.
Yeah.
That competence not the bar in this situation. I mean, I'd love to have a competent Secretary
Above and
of Defense.
beyond.
Yeah, but I mean, just incredibly smart, moral, battle tested leaders. The moment that they stood up to Trump in the first administration, there was a target on their head. And that was the test to see how much power that they could take and how loyal it was. And now we're making sure that the government remains loyal. And this is a concern I have on a national security level, on a domestic level,
Yeah.
is not just, okay, we impeach and remove Trump. What are we left with?
Right.
What organizations that should be respected and nonpartisan are we left with that we're going to have to rebuild? And the more damage they can do in a short amount of time, the more we can rebuild. And the forum you're at on Sunday, I said this, and it's very true. We all should be raising alarm bells and asking the question, not do we trust the president, but do we trust our government to withstand any president? And
Right.
that's why we had separation of powers. And that has been trampled on to go to authoritarianism.
Well, here's one more news item for you you can react to, and it has to do with Ukraine. Um, Breaking news this morning, a while back this morning, the Ukrainian partisan and resistance movement, Russian occupation authorities, according to the Ukrainian partisan and resistance movement, Russian occupation authorities have ordered officials in parts of Crimea to evacuate valuable equipment and documents from the peninsula.
I
What do
have
you
not
think?
read into that. Okay, yeah, go ahead with your question. Yeah.
I was going to just say, where do you see that war being, and do you think that one or the other has the upper hand? And what do you think about the recent incursions by Ukraine into Russia's oil business?
Mark, that's a very loaded question. It's a very, very long, loaded question there. So let's address in multiple parts. Just reading that headline again, I have not read it. I haven't read into depth, so I don't want to go into strong detail just off of that one when I haven't done the
Yeah.
research. My job is not to be reactionary, and I don't like reacting things before I deep dive into them. With that being said, though, this is something that's been a conflict for a long time. And I look at this at a bigger level, and I look at it outside of just the scope of Ukraine, because these aren't isolated incidents. War does not happen in a bubble. But the way that we have reacted and what we've allowed Russia to do in Ukraine, how can NATO trust us, especially under this administration? That's the question that has to be raised, and that raises concerns of international instability. And
And
then
of course, the United
there's
States,
more on that. So
yeah, of
if
course, the United States plays a part, or more likely in the last 18 months, they've played an increasingly less of a part to Ukraine's defense. And
and we owe it to Ukraine to have a defense because,
that's right.
and I know Ukraine is not a part of NATO. I'm well aware of that, but the bordering countries, and they have been an ally to us. So when we just let them out, now I will challenge here when you said, does it show someone has the upper hand? The fact that we've been at war for this long,
Yeah.
the Russian-Ukrainian conflict has been going on for a very long time. Russia is not the all-powerful being that they want us to believe.
Some
Because
people
the war
mentioned
would
that
have
they
been
thought,
over well a long time ago if they were, even with the intervention that us and other allies have put in there.
yeah,
It does show that Russia is not as strong as they want to believe, as they want to tell everybody that they want to provoke. And I look at it from the experience I have as a tank commander. And there is an argument when we look at near peer threats, the battlefield has changed dramatically. Russia is the only country that has technology more advanced than our Abrams on their tanks. And they have something that's called, so when you're firing a tank, you lock in on your target. And it's essentially like a radar, right? And it locks in and it does the calculations off of what round you're shooting. So there's different tank rounds that weigh a different amount, what projection your gun's at. So you're aiming, but it's called lasing it with a laser,
like a
right?
gun director.
Yeah. So and it does all the math on what that trajectory actually looks like based off of distance and how much the round weighs, where it actually needs to be angled. Obviously, when you're shooting, almost 5,000 meters away, that's different than a handgun. You're not pointing and aiming that. So, they have one that if you do that, the Russian tank, automatically turns and locks in on you and fires. So you have to go around that. Well, that's something that we trained against, that we're told, because you can't go into battle without understanding your enemy completely. At the time, I know this was a couple years ago, and this was right before this conflict, but it was estimated that they had 10 of them
Mhm.
only, and didn't have the ability to replace them. So, I mean,
Yes.
that's like how much of a threat
So
is that?
people said in the first few
And we
weeks
still
of the
haven't seen
war,
them.
people said in the first few weeks of the war that Russia had already lost and they were just waiting to quit, basically, because they showed themselves immediately to be not the power that they had said to have been. So,
I would
and
agree with that, but I'd also think they were trying to wait out a regime change here in the United States. And
right, right,
when I say regime change, I mean regime change. I don't mean just electing a new president, because they did interfere with our elections.
yeah,
Very much so. We know that this is very well proven that Russia has interfered with our elections. It's clear that Putin wants Trump in office. That should concern people.
yeah.